The way I'm looking at everything now is you have to make your business obsolete, and you have to obsolete yourself, because if you don't obsolete you, someone else is going to obsolete you. If you really want to stay ahead of the curve and you really want to grow, you got to get yourself out of the day-to-day business. 9 out of 10 entrepreneurs, they may conceptually get that, but the actual application of it is just really difficult. If you're doing any copy and pasting at all, that's 90 days ago. Where we're moving is like, I'm now briefing, not prompting.
I'd say the biggest challenge I have right now, Mike, is the time that I have to play with AI. I'm paying attention to it. I'm reading on it. Obviously, in other contexts where I'm doing something, but I don't have the time to just deep work it. Like, I want to set the clock, give me 2 hours to just play and integrate. But I find fragmented experiences with it, which is always leaving me with more of an appetite than I can satisfy.
Yeah, there's every day I wake up, there's what I want to do, and then there's the tasks that are in front of me and the projects that I'm working on right now. So it's like I've gotten good enough at doing certain things where now I've got to complete, I'm going to repeat that task over and over again, or keep refining it, really. There is no do the task. See, here's the thing about AI. There's never do the task over and over again. That game is over. It is that, witness the task, repeat, make corrections, refine until it speeds up and does it perfectly. So there is a level of continuous novelty if you're willing to see the novelty and the iterations and the refinement. Mm-hmm. So there's that. And yeah, sometimes I want to dive into something that's a little more, different and complex, and setting aside time to do that. So it's a whole thing.
Yeah. And I mean, it's even identifying areas in life where you're like, okay, I just want to build the integration for this or the automation for this, but I'm still in that busy work, right? It's the, I don't want to say monkey bars, but it's the balance of executing in your business and in your day-to-day while also handing those things off. And that's where the tug of war tends to come.
Did you see my post yesterday on Facebook?
I missed it.
Okay, so I posted on Facebook. I also posted on LinkedIn. I posted similar posts on both. And it was basically, and we're going to get into this today, but I'm going to give everyone a little bit of the cliffhanger here, or the hook, which is, I'm gonna reveal today the 7 patterns of how I actually work with AI. So I've identified 7 patterns, and these aren't the only patterns. These are just the most prominent patterns I was using this week. Mm-hmm. And some of them are very core. So I just want to let everyone know that's coming. And what you were saying really reminds me of, so I made the post yesterday, which is I'm continuously getting in the same exact conversation, or very similar conversation with business owners, which is, I spend the majority of my day running my business, and the little bit of time I do have to use AI and learn new things, I just end up in a chat box, or I go use Lovable, I go use Replit, or I use some platform, and I get a really cool output. And that's the extent of it. And that's kind of where, that's where most people are at. And so I heard this like 3 times in one night. I was at a party on Saturday, and 3 times in one night, and 3 different entrepreneurs share the same thing with me. And I have calls booked with 2 of them. But what I told them was like, I saw this coming, and one of the philosophies I have adopted after 19 years of entrepreneurship is, if you really want to stay ahead of the curve and you really want to grow, you got to get yourself out of the day-to-day business. You got to get yourself out of the day-to-day operations so that you can continue to learn and evolve your business. But 9 out of 10 entrepreneurs, they may conceptually get that, but the actual application of it is just really difficult. And then also knowing what it is you should be studying. So I bring that up because I actually pulled it off after years of not pulling that off. And I happened to pull it off over the last few years and be able to spend a lot of time on AI. So, it's like, and AI, the learning curve is so steep that you need to bring the best hours of your day to it.
Yes.
And that for me is between 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. is when I'm the hottest.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I'm learning. And the implementation is a lot easier. But most people running a business, 8 to 11, or, whatever their hottest moment is, they're usually dedicating it to something else, something that feels urgent and important in their business, but it's not learning how to implement these tools or taking these tools and systematizing their business with it.
We've said before on how rethinking some of what we believe to be true, and AI is disrupting some of those foundational truths, I say in air quotes, that we've held on to. But then there's also some of the fundamentals that is also true, as you mentioned, getting out of your business. If you really want to grow, that is still true. If you're the entrepreneur that's stuck in the day-to-day, you own a job, not necessarily owning a business. Having that freedom allows you to work with AI. But as you mentioned, you even said it before, a lot of it is refining and reiterating. I've found as I'm learning and playing with AI, there's a lot of problem solving because you're going to come to dead ends. You're going to have to fix what you're doing when you're trying to push the limits, as you should.
Mostly dead. Yeah, I mean, up to this point, it's been mostly dead ends for me.
Yeah,
and I've watched other people be like, I was working on it for hours and it didn't work, and I go, well, that's kind of the point. Like that's learning. Learning is hitting a dead end, and then most of what learning is learning what not to do, right? So, and the whole idea of becoming a business owner, I think there's levels to that. There's people who are really good entrepreneurs they are business owners, but they're also operating the business. They're not really bogged down. They just didn't have their eyes on this for whatever reason. So I don't want it to sound like, because some of the people I'm talking to are running, $3 to $10 million businesses, and their job in the business is mostly networking, for instance, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they do have a lot of freedom over their own time. They just didn't see this. They just didn't dedicate this. And not everyone's a tinkerer.
Yeah,
not everyone wants to tinker with this.
They get joy in the business. A friend of mine, his business is doing over $1 million. And he enjoys the day to day. He does his business because that's what he likes to do. Like if he wakes up, that's what he wants to do. So it ends up just being where he spends his time.
Yeah. So and people can go look at my Facebook post. It was because this post later. It was April 7th. Facebook or LinkedIn, you can see what I said, but I said a lot in a little.
Yeah.
But,
okay.
Yeah, I know that today you were wanting. I'm like taking control of the show today.
Go for it, man.
It's because I prepped.
I have some notes too, but let's jump in.
Yeah, you were wanting to talk about prompting, and the prompting conversation is totally transformed with agents and co-work specifically. And people are, if you've been following me for very long, I'm talking about all these different platforms I'm using, but I've really spent 98% of my AI work in Claude at this point. And I'd say over 80% of that is probably kind of depending on where I'm at in a workflow. I might be in chat or co-work, but mostly co-work. And so, I prep for today using Claude and I asked it not just for the talking points, but I was able to, because I'm using something called persistent memory in my co-work sessions, I was able to ask it to go grab how I work with Claude and then point things out. And then we structured some things, and then I pushed back, and then I asked it to push back on me. And so like one of the, we're going to get into the 7 things, which is much deeper, but just reminding people to challenge it and have it challenge you back and forth.
Really quick for the audience, what is persistent memory? Like if they're kind of newbies at it.
Yeah, I'm going to get into that. And so there's the idea that most people have of, they like ChatGPT because it has context, right? It remembers things, but it chooses what it remembers, and what it decides to remember changes in ways that you don't want it to. It's not really that good. Claude also has memory in chats, but I think it runs into the same problem. Persistent memory is something where you can, in co-work, you can program, with a lot of agents, you can do this, is program memory files, and where you can, and I just did an audit on some memory files today to make sure there was no files that were conflicting with each other. And so, and then setting up a schedule for it to audit itself for these types of things and bring me back a report. And so, anyways, yeah, being able to have memory that's specific to what it is that you're building, that you're able to come back with over time. Yeah, and we started the show, and I thought about splitting this up into 2 episodes of the content, and then it realized that if we were to do 2 shows, one of the shows would have been too basic for the audience. Mm-hmm. So just something that was there. And so we reshaped everything. And nice. So that's pattern number 4. I'm kind of touching on one of the patterns before we get there, but I just want to kind of let you know, I think just talking about how show prep works is beneficial here.
Yeah.
So yeah, like what have you had this, what have you done new this week, or what's an aha moment you've had this week?
Aha moment was really the dead ends, realizing that how I'm engaging with AI. I start with the role, context, and building everything out. I've relied heavily on the master file, the persistent memory in terms of how I speak and how I relate. And I've really gotten comfortable with the fact of make this true to my brand colors, make this true to my voice, and having that consistent. But as I've really pushed into more of the agentic side of things, having it pick up and actually get into like go high level and stuff, that's where I started reaching the breaks. And that's where I'm like, okay, having a backup, and you're working with multiple systems here. So for me, that's where I realized my biggest constraint is the time to troubleshoot, is because I'm learning how to approach differently how I'm engaging, right? More of like the outcome focus. This is what I want in the end game. This is the results that I want. I want an automated system that's going to deliver my blog every week. Reverse engineer the steps that's going to be really doing that and paying attention to what my workflows are, instead of like, hey, give me the blog text and then now move forward with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's levels on that. I think that's one of the things that's like at level 1, people are copying, pasting. Level 2 is they're building workflows. I've got this task and I want this task to be automated. So I'm going to string together some things in co-work in order to get things from point A to point B. Maybe you're using N8N, or you're using make.com or Zapier or something like that. And you're stringing some things together, you're scheduling things. And then the next level up is zooming all the way out and saying, let's look at what the entire brand is trying to accomplish and what are all the big pieces, and then drilling down into the small pieces. And I think that's where a lot of people are missing. They're like, it's kind of funny. Every call I've gotten on has been an entrepreneur that wants to learn how to use AI, or wants me to help them implement AI in their business. And I'm like, I can't really Like I could build out some workflows, but it's not really going to solve the problem you're wanting to solve. We actually have to zoom out and analyze the whole thing. But yeah, so yeah, the levels to workflows is really, most people aren't even at the workflows part.
I'd say I'm at the workflows.
They're still obsessing over prompt engineering. They're going to courses. They're using templates. They're using cheat sheets, and that's 90 days ago. And so, like if you're doing any copy and pasting at all, that's 90 days ago. Like we've already moved like 2 more stages ahead. And just to make everyone feel a little bit better, I've only talked to one other person who's really knocking it out. It's like at the level beyond workflows and doing more of like a total business analysis. That's a whole nother skill, and I think it's a skill that exists. You have to have been an executive, like you have to have like experience as an executive in order to be able to see the business from that view. So that's part of it. It's not this idea that like I can just go and get an OpenClaw, or there's a new software I'm checking out called Paperclip. We can run your business in that, but I still think that you still have to personally have an understanding of how business works in a way for it to be ultimately useful. Like,
yeah.
But I think that everything that everyone's doing is useful, but I would caution that you may end up creating a bunch of workflows that get obsoleted by new models. Like the business model has to be challenged and pressure tested using AI, using the knowledge of what is out there for AI. And another thing that I'm noticing is in market research, whenever I'm looking at a business, I'm looking at what are the other businesses that are out there that are solving the same problem. And there are businesses that are AI. There are people who either they're under a totally new brand and they've been in the business in that industry for a while, or they're new to the industry and they just have these AI tools and they figured it out real quick. But what I see is a lot of new companies coming around and sweeping these legacy businesses. When I say legacy, I mean like 5 years, which normally that would be like you're new.
Yeah.
So it's like part of what the way I'm looking at everything now is you have to make your business obsolete, and you have to obsolete yourself, because if you don't obsolete you, someone else is going to obsolete you. And that means that you have to do considering all the technology that's available at our fingertips right now, how does that fundamentally shift the model? And so the business model. And so the business models that are going to be the last ones to transform are the ones that are most highly regulated. Yep. So I got a buddy who's in accounting. They can use Claude Chat, but they can't use Claude Cowork. Healthcare.
Insurance.
Insurance. Yeah. Anything that's heavily regulated, finance, is probably going to be a little bit safer, a little bit longer. But I think that when it does flip, it's going to be a harder smack in the face. So I actually think being in an unregulated, a less regulated space is going to be really beneficial, because you're being forced to change early when the changes aren't so dramatic. But I think we're going to see some people in healthcare and in finance that it's going to be a major whiplash.
Yeah. Like, whoa, what is that out of nowhere? So I'd say this for the person who's listening and they find themselves at level 1 that you broke down beforehand. Maybe they're in an industry that is not heavily regulated. They want to be on the cutting edge of things. You mentioned how the progress of these LLMs will constantly change how we interact with them. I'm curious, how do you go from the level that they are now to more of the experience that you've gotten to, the 7 patterns of how you work with AI, if that's future proof? I say in air quotes as well. Let's break it down. Let's jump in. What are the 7 layers, the 7 patterns of Mike's approach?
Yeah. So, one thing I want to point out. Yeah. So this is just a little preamble to what we're talking about, and I've kind of got into it already. But chat versus co-work, and so co-work is specific to Claude, but we're witnessing a lot of everything moving into that direction in a way. Like OpenClaw has, like if you master co-work, then OpenClaw is going to be a lot easier to use. So chat, think about it as like texting a smart friend and starts blank every time. Even if you do have context and it has some memory, you're really having to start the whole chat over again in a way and creating context and all this stuff. Cowork is a friend in your office with your files, email, calendar, and tools, and it remembers everything. If you set up the memory properly, it remembers everything and everything that's important and forgets anything that's not important. And there's some like simple ways of setting things up so that happens. And so most people are still like texting their friend. And the 7 patterns only work because of persistent context. In chat, about half of these are just impossible without that persistent context. So most of what I'm going to be talking about is the new, we'll say like the 2nd generation of AI that's just come out. So on Monday, so I'm going to get into this first pattern, but on Monday, I sat down inside of Cowork. I gave it access to basically every business I'm working inside of and with, consulting and ones I'm working inside of. And I said, hey, I'm preparing for a consult call with the owner of, I'm going to leave that blank, with an owner. And then by the end of the conversation I had in there, and the reason I started that in Cowork is because it had access to everything that I'm capable of doing. It understands, now it knows what I know. I gave it access to like 5 different folders. And so it's like, okay, this is how Mike operates. This is what he's capable of. And so all I said is like, I'm preparing for a consult call with this person. And I ended up with 16 deliverables by the end of the conversation.
Wow.
And so no pre-written prompts, no prompt engineering. And so prompt engineering, like you've even heard me talk about it. If we just rewind a couple of weeks, you'll hear me talking about prompt engineering. And now there's still prompt engineering in there, but it's starting to become less important. And so where we're moving is like, I'm now briefing, not prompting. And so that's pattern number 1 is you're going to brief your AI. You're not going to prompt it. So what a lot of people might say is write me an email to a consulting prospect, make it professional, 200 words, right? And that's like giving it a specification and like you're ordering something from a vending machine. So what I said, I'll read the actual prompt is I'm preparing for a consult call with the owner of blank. He's bleeding cash from staff salaries. We've been friends for 12 years. I was sharing at a party how I've been using AI and he's scared of firing people. So without that was the prompt, right?
That's it.
And so I gave him the AI, the situation, the relationship, the emotions, and the stakes.
I noticed you didn't ask for the outcome or the goal.
No, because it's got all this context, all this context about what I do for companies. It makes these assumptions based on what it has already.
Got it.
And without without me asking, Claude went and researched the company, mapped the 16-person team by name and role, identified the likely root cause before I said anything, drafted questions, structured a call strategy, and then it has access to my email and my calendar, and it saw there were 4 team members invited to the call, and it identified who they were and was able to say this person does this in the company, and then restructured everything. It restructured everything in real time based on who was going to be on the call, instead of me having to tell it to. I didn't tell it to do any of this, so it started. You can see it thinking, oh, this is how we'll do it. Oh, wait, these other 4 people are going to be on the call. We need to rethink this. And so next time you open up co-work, you don't start with write me this or that. You start with the situation, who's involved, what's at stake, what's the tension.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to brief it like you're briefing another human being. Like, okay, I've got a business partner here.
Yeah.
Like, I have a business partner. I'm briefing it like, I would set them up. I would start with context is what I would do with a real human being. And I was doing that a lot with chat too, but you notice that my context that I had to give it was a sentence or two. It wasn't this big, long context I used to have to give it.
Yeah. Like if a buddy of mine was a contractor building houses and he came to me and he's like, oh, my friend John walked up and he's looking to settle down with him and his family and he's got this land, I would identify as like, okay, you need materials to buy a house. Like, because I know what he does and I know what he's doing, he doesn't have to tell me he's trying to build a house. He could just come into me. And if I'm working at Home Depot and he tells me that, I'm like, all right, you need lumber, you need this. I can give you what you need because I know what you do and I know what your situation is.
Yeah, if you're a contractor and someone shares that with you, your brain just starts going.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It fills in the rest.
Yeah. And because Claude knows what I do, all I got to do is give it some information and then it starts running with it. And so, and it's pretty good at giving me exactly what I'm wanting. I noticed when I was doing this with Manus, it was really, it was doing a bunch of stuff I didn't want it to do yet. It made too many assumptions.
Okay.
But I think that's because I didn't program the context like I have. Like I wasn't using it as heavily as I'm using Claude. And one of the reasons is if you use Manus in the same exact way you use Claude, you're going to spend 10 times as much money.
Okay.
So
if I may really quick, because, and I hope I'm not jumping into a deeper pattern, but when you mentioned it knows so much about you, is this in your About Me folder breaking down? For example, with my Claude Cowork, I'll have About Me, the way I speak, and then there's my, pretty much my business Bible, right? The brand, colors, the specific audience, the audience research, the goal of the company, the different revenue tiers. Is all that in the folder that it references whenever you brief it?
I haven't even built that out.
Yo. Say more, dude. Okay.
Yeah, because I did it in Cowork. Like if I was in chat, I would need all that. Because I'm in Cowork, it's only looking at real-time work that's being done.
Okay.
And so it's not operating off of any I sat down and thought about this and did this template and put it in. It's really just going, what has Mike actually been doing? Which I've gotten much better results with by just going off of reality versus what I think I do, which is these are rarely the same.
Yeah.
I might be in the ballpark. I mean, it's going off of pure data, right? Instead of my thoughts. And so it's going off of my behaviors. It's going off of my actions. It's not going off of what I think about me and what I think about this and that. And so
ideal setup.
Right. I don't have identity in there. like now that I'm saying it out loud, because I know I haven't done that. I just started like building things. Because I haven't done that, like I wonder if it's probably I can see the benefit of doing it now after I've been working in it, and then I work with it to put something in there. But yeah, everyone's here. There's no right or wrong way to do a lot of this stuff. This is just what I'm finding works for me.
Yeah.
And I find that when I talk to people, I'm just doing a lot more than most people have figured out, And
That is an interesting context, though, because with Claude Cowork, I was so focused on establishing the About Me folder, and that's I'm setting up an ideal picture of self and then having it operate in that, where you're more of this is the data, this is how I'm operating, and it can meet you in the reality. So that is actually a very interesting A/B test of an experience with how the AI responds to you based off of what your ideal view of what you do is,
yeah.
or based off of what you actually do and how you actually execute.
Yeah. In fact, quick story. I had invested some time in creating this content ecosystem where I build out like all these different. It was getting pretty complex, and then I was playing around with my personal brand. I was playing around with what I do and the types of things I like to talk about and content I like to put out. And then I picked up these different projects, and I've got 3 different projects, and I basically had to put my personal stuff on the back burner. So like my website's it's halfway done. Like I got a bunch of personal stuff that's just halfway done.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but I've got clients, I've got, businesses that are counting on me to get things done. And so I'm like, okay, back burner that, I'm working on this. And so I came back to it yesterday after being in it's been about 6 weeks of just being too busy to work on my own thing. And I came back, and based on looking at everything I've been doing, I said, okay, I started a new co-work session. I gave it access to every file inside I have a Claude folder, and I gave it access to all the subfolders. Like, all right, based on everything we've been doing the last few couple months, what's the ideal offer here? I've got more businesses knocking at my door. I'm every day I'm talking to somebody new,
mm-hmm.
and I'm really mapping out how am I going to work with people, because when I look out at the landscape, the way that I'm using it is, and the way I desire to work with businesses is a little bit, it's different than what I'm seeing other people putting out there. And like, I can't give somebody a price tag, for instance. I can't just be like, I'll do this for this much or this or that. Like, I actually have to know that, like, what is the size of the business? How much tech is involved? How much am I going to have to sift through? Is it simple? Is it complex? There's a lot of questions. I need to know what the scope of the job is going to be before I can even dig in there.
Yeah.
And so that was like one of the things I was wrestling with. I'm talking to somebody Saturday night, and they go, well, just straight up, what do you charge? I was like, dude, I don't have a number. And that's one
market price.
I sat down yesterday, and I was like, well, I don't have a number because I don't have a specific, there's not a one offer fits all. And so I was working through that yesterday, but it looked at everything I was doing and then said, well, it looks like when you have this, the next time you have a consult call, next time you sit down with somebody, this is like, we worked through it, and we came up with this 3-phase solution. But it's doing real work in co-work, and then using that as a way to recognize your own patterns and how you do things and what you actually deliver, and what I can say I've done for people and what I do for people. And so, anybody can do that. You don't have to be a consultant. You can anything you're doing in your business, you could just ask it, like, what have I been doing? And then in that whole process was, it identified several things that I do well, and I go, well, where are my gaps? What could be done better? Like, okay, based on what I've been developing, what would be the next stage in developing this and making this cleaner or better? And so, yeah, it's really cool to do that. And I feel like I'm getting off track a little bit. Might be
pattern number 2.
Pattern number 2, thinking systems, not outputs. So in the days of chat, we were thinking in outputs. Now we're thinking in systems. And so one way to start thinking in systems is there's a question you can ask is, you're building out I want to build a system for completing, I'm going to get from A to Z. And then you map out this whole A to Z workflow, right? Okay, we're going to map out this whole workflow. And then the simple question is, how do we make this run without me triggering it every time? Right? And so that one question will poke holes in your entire system. Because what's going to happen is, well, we'll be able to do, I can put it on a schedule and it'll get through the first 3, but at the 4th thing, you're going to have manually, like, great. How do we, what's the solution to taking me out of this? And so what you end up doing is continuing to pressure test your systems by continually asking it how to make this run without me. And so that also, like, I might be doing something one time. I might build out this whole thing and go high level, or I might build a website, or I built a sales coach the other day.
Nice.
And so it's like, okay, how do I turn this one-time deliverable into an automated system? And so,
this is kind of like what I mentioned before with my big aha moment when you asked, what have I found? And I was coming up to the dead ends of having cowork do more processes for me, starting with the outcome, but I'm seeing it get into bottlenecks or the manual necessity along the way, where I'm having to reverse engineer. It's like, okay, what are the different things I have to have it do to get to this end point? And how do I do that without being the bottleneck? Now, I'm the one in the way of the agent doing what it needs to do.
Yeah. And sometimes the agent will tell you it's too hard, or it'll tell you it can't do it, or it's technically incapable. And I've actually had it come back. One of the things that tipped me off of this is it came back. I gave it something to do the other day, and it said, I don't have that ability. And I go, you did it the other day. Like, I watched you do it. Yeah. And so there are times, I don't know why it'll give up at certain things. I don't know why it'll power through at other times. I could guess that, if I'm using Claude at the same time that everybody else in the world is using it, they've got some type of governor in there that's like, give up a little bit early. But I just tell it to power through, and it'll do it. Another thing a cool thing that I created is a work logger. So I created like a global work logger that lives in my Claude folder, and it fires every time I do anything. It fires at the end of every session, and it captures what we did.
You threw that into the school community, didn't you?
Yeah, I dropped that in the school community. But I also created one specific to go high level, and I've done this for several different pieces of software. And so what I did was I created a skill that identifies anytime we're doing anything go high level, and then it documents. So one of its jobs is to map out go high level, every action that could be taken, everything we can do in go high level. I want you to map out all the possibilities, and I want you to maintain this map. right?
It's a lot.
And then I want you to also, every time you do something go high level, I want you to reference the map before you start doing anything. And then if you run into a roadblock or you try to do it one way, but you need to do another way, what I noticed was it was trying to do it the wrong way several times over multiple days. And I go, okay, we're going to create a gotchas reference file that gets updated. So anytime you run into a roadblock and then you find the other way, you update this other file, this reference file that remembers. And now we're getting into memory, right? It remembers when I hit this roadblock, oh yeah, do this. And so now I have it consulting the gotchas file beforehand, the map beforehand. And so there's like multiple layers of memory that's happening there. So anytime I have it do anything and go high level now, it just gets faster and faster and faster, cleaner and cleaner and cleaner.
Nice.
And so every project I have has its own go high level logger and it logs the things that are specific to that project. And then I have the global one that is anytime we're using high level at all, it's documenting and guiding. So, and that's all automated. I set that up to be automated. If you don't say automatically update, it'll count on you to manually tell it things. So you've got to stay on top of it in a lot of ways. And so,
number 3, pattern number 3.
So the prompt here, we're talking about prompts, but is every time you get a good output, ask, how do I make this happen again without me asking?
Oh,
yeah.
You almost buried that jewel. I'm like, let's move on. And you're like, hold on.
Yeah. And if you're getting the same kind of output more than twice, you should be building a system, not reprompting.
I like that. How do I make this happen again without me asking?
Mm-hmm.
Now, pattern number 3. We got briefing, not prompting, number 1. Number 2 is thinking systems, not outputs, number 3.
Yeah. So give the AI the messy human context, which is a little bit of what I talked about at the beginning of the show, but we'll get into this example. So I was talking to a founder that's building a 2-sided marketplace. And so he's kind of like Amazon, you know? You've got the people who are selling and you got the people who are buying.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, I just gave this I gave it some messy context. I didn't say write a consulting, like I'm going to be consulting with this company. So I gave it the full messy picture. And kind of like I did earlier in the show, I talked about just like, this is the context. And part of it was, there was a scope outside of AI that I also am really well suited to do. And so I needed to say, hey, I'm going to advise on M&A advice. I'm doing M&A advisory as well. So merger and acquisition advisory. And then also, because they're strapped for cash, I need to do a revenue share tied to incremental gross revenue gained. So because of what I'm doing, they're going to make more money. I may not take as much cash up front, but I'm going to get something on the backside. And so there was like the initial proposal, and then I saw it and I go, I don't think that's going to work. And then I was able to just say, hey, like, and it was just a lot of back and forth. It was and it was messy. It was messy, but by the end it became really, really clean. And so, like, part of the messy stuff that was in there is relationship dynamics internally on the team, the fear that was present, the politics. This is like a company that's got political, there's internal political stuff, there's external political stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's like, Washington, D.C. politics involved in this. and just some weird circumstances. And so I was able to give it all this like messy human stuff, and we were able to get there.
I hear that as like have the hard conversation, right? Like, hey, this is what we got to get through.
Yeah, I think that so I think like one of the fears that's coming up for some owners is that I'm gonna have to fire some people on my team, or I'm thinking, this company has been bleeding already, and there's not like hiring someone for what I desire to charge may not work for them from a cash basis. So there's all these things that can be like previously was difficult to surface, but now because I'm like, oh, actually, I'm not nervous, and they're not nervous, and the the founder's not nervous about firing. What's all those things go away, all those people calm down when they have clarity, and that is, well, this is how we're going to approach this. Like, if I know exactly how AI can work in my business, then letting go of people doesn't seem so scary. It just seems obvious. And so it can start making things really obvious, or, like historically, I might not have offered this founder anything. I might have been like, they don't have enough cash. I don't know exactly what's going to happen on the back end here. I don't, this seems kind of messy.
Yeah.
And then I engage with AI, and I get massive clarity. And I go, look, these are your 3 options. You can do this, this, or this to engage with me. And that's it. And I've noticed that there's just like a level of, the clarity just adds like a level of calm that comes in with that.
Before I jump to the next pattern, is there a prompt or anything to add before I bury the jewel again?
No.
No, that's fantastic. Bringing the messy human context to your AI. Pattern number 4.
Challenge AI's reasoning. So and sometimes you don't even need a reason to challenge it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It actually made a suggestion to me that made all the sense in the world. Right? It gave me it suggested a price for an offer. And I just asked, like, where did you get those numbers? Because sometimes AI will go out and show you the formulas and create a spreadsheet and say, this is how we got from A to B. And this time it didn't. It just gave me a number. And anytime it just gives me an answer without giving me the context of how it got to the answer, I have to ask, how did you get that? And so what Claude came back, when I said, where did you get those numbers? Claude came back and said, general market positioning, no hard data. And I go, well, great. And one of my philosophies around how to price things is I don't like to even, like, my awareness around what the market price is. I really don't even like to know it. I don't really like to know what other people are charging. I mean, I will find out there's certain cases where I do for sure. But what I know is, and this is from advising entrepreneurs for fucking 13 years, is most people aren't doing well. Like 95% of entrepreneurs are undercharging. They don't know they don't know how to budget. They don't know cash flow. They don't know any of these things. So the market rate is usually wrong. And so this whole, where did you get those numbers, open up a whole conversation about the situation. And then that led to creating a file in my Claude cowork that is my pricing philosophy file. So now, anytime I see that there's a place to question the reasoning, and then I get to put my own reasoning in. And so, because I know I've always had my own reasoning in my own head. And so then it was like, oh, I can actually sit down and talk with Claude about how I like to price things and the things that I consider. And this is the budgeting methods that I use. And this is how I find my pricing floor. This is how I figure out what's the minimum amount of money I need to charge in order for me to feel good and to be able to deliver the service or product in a way that's sustainable for the business and is going to continue to serve the clients.
Yeah.
So
that reminds me of actually a good buddy of mine. He has a Substack, and he shared a story of how AI lied to him. And it's on his Substack, so I'm sure he doesn't mind me sharing it. But he got very heavily into disc golf and he wants to be competitive, and he's been working on his putting. And he's probably, other than you, the other friend I have who I know uses AI more than anybody else. And he had an engagement where he created a disc golf coach, and he would put in his stats, his data, his workouts, everything. And he was working on his putting. And one day the AI coach, the golf coach, suggested that he switch his feet when putting. And he did it, and he got some good success. And he was like, oh, yeah, this is fantastic. And then he's like, oh, there's professional disc golf on TV. Let me sit down and watch it to see how the pros do it. And he saw all the pros did not switch their feet. So then he went back to the AI coach. He was like, where did you get that tip to switch feet? And like the AI coach was like, it was a Reddit post. Like that was it. That was it. And he's like, no, like had to undo it all. But to your point, he got that suggestion, didn't get the context of where it came from. And he shared that on his Substack pretty much as a cautionary tale to folks with exactly what you're saying of the reasoning of the AI was, oh, someone posted this on Reddit and it worked for them. So it might work for you. But there's no detailed data behind that suggestion. He followed it blindly.
Yeah. So I think that, the moral of the story is don't accept everything blindly. And also don't reject it. I think I hear a lot of people go, oh, it lies or it doesn't have good information. So then maybe you just shouldn't use it at all. Or if you just want to reject something that doesn't sound right and start over, you're wasting your time. But you can just ask it to justify its thinking and you'll get there.
I love it.
So some phrases that work is, why this approach? What are you basing that on? What's the weakest part of this? I also like to ask it, pressure test this. I pressure test everything until it gets to a point where it's like, we're clean. We've discussed a lot. And then another one is, if you were me, what would you push back on?
Ooh. Love it.
Yeah, even for this show, the first draft, I pushed back on it. And then that's how, we came up with this.
I could already tell we're going to have a detailed PDF for the audience breaking all this down, because I'm not going to read all of this in the show notes at the end. And I know this will be in the show notes, but this is some dense stuff. So I appreciate the prep and I appreciate you sharing. And I'll just say it now, like we'll have a digital source for folks listening to kind of get this all in one spot. But pattern number 5.
It feels light.
When I say dense,
I'm joking. It is dense.
There's a lot to take in, man. But I'm loving the meal. So let's get course number 5.
All right. So patterns 1 through 4 was all about how to interact with AI. Patterns 5 through 7 are about how to build infrastructure.
Ooh, okay.
So make it denser. So pattern number 5 is build persistent context instead of re-explaining. So I have, and everybody should have, if they're using Cowork, you have the Claude.md file.
Mm-hmm.
So my Claude.md file is over 200 lines at this point. So it tells Claude who I am, what my business looks like, clients, brand guidelines, my pipelines, voice corrections, common mistakes. That file does need to get cleaned up every once in a while. So it's the thing that gets referenced every single time. So one thing I want you to know is it's not, it can still get things wrong. So you have it's not going to follow that like it's the Bible every single time, the Claude.md file. But it's something that's getting built over time. And you can have conversations inside Cowork about what's in that file, and you can direct it to keep certain things in that file. So some things I don't want in that file, and that's separate, and some things I do want in there. So it's good to run an audit, and you can run your audit inside Cowork at any time.
I like it.
And so your persistent memory goes beyond that. So that's like the core file about you. And then I have like client folders. It remembers like the brand guides, the diagnosis, the strategy. And then I have skill files, and skill files are, I have an email writer, or I have, you can train Claude. You can create a skill with Claude to write like you do. So I have different clients, and I might be working on something for a client, and I can just be like, we need an email sequence, and it'll write like them. And that way I can just knock it out without having to wait on them. And then I'll have them review it later and have them clean it up and get a thumbs up from them. But they don't have to do that, and I don't have to wait on them. Like work used to be, we're creating something. Now I've got to wait, a week for this person to get back. If I do a big chunk of it for them, they're just editing. It's a lot better.
Nice.
That persistent memory, work logs is part of that. And so the thing about the persistent memory is each session makes the next one faster. So.
And these are all native on your computer, correct?
That's right. So not necessarily. So a lot of them are, a lot of Cowork stuff is there are skills that are stored in Claude.
Correct.
So you notice you can just open up a web chat in Claude, and it can pull different skills. So some of it's stored there, and some of it's stored on your computer.
Yeah, and you can upload those skills from a file on your computer. And I only reference that because, as we mentioned a few episodes ago, right now it's Claude, but if Manus or Perplexity ends up becoming the darling of AI, these files are still able to shift over and be used.
They're very valuable. And this is actually one reason. So this is great. This whole persistent memory conversation, we've been touching on it throughout the whole show because it's so important. A lot of people want to get an OpenClaw, and every single person, even someone who is a really advanced engineer that gets an OpenClaw, the story is the same. I haven't heard anything different yet. And I desire for my story to be the one that's different. And the story is, I got my OpenClaw. It took me like 8 hours to set it up. And then it didn't know how to do anything. Like, it was just a messy. It just went out and did stuff. Like, it'll go do what you wanted to do, but the way it goes about doing it can burn through a lot of tokens. It builds things that break, yada, yada, yada. And so if you're, like you're saying, this whole persistent memory file system, if you build this out, it should work with any type of, like, everything's built with this persistent memory concept. Manus is the same. I think OpenAI, I haven't opened up ChatGPT in a while, so I don't know what's going on there. But I think they have they have the same thing happening over there. Perplexity definitely does. Perplexity acts a bit differently. Mm-hmm. They don't have their own models. They're just a harness accessing other models. Same with Manus. And so, yeah, when I get my OpenClaw, I'll be able to take all of this and drop it in there. And now I've got a huge leg up on people. And so what happened was OpenClaw came out, and then Cowork came out. And everyone who bought the OpenClaw, who got a Mac Mini and loaded OpenClaw up, they basically we're trying to most people I know, we're simultaneously building things in Claude and on OpenClaw when what would have been smarter, and this was kind of like, I had like a hunch, and over time the hunch was verified, and I could actually go, oh, this is exactly why. So I followed my intuition on that one, which was most people wasted their time setting it up. If they would have mastered the skill development and the persistent memory over in Claude with Cowork, starting up an OpenClaw would be a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're re-explaining yourself every time you talk to AI, you're doing it wrong. Start with the Claude.md file, even 20 lines, changes everything. That's kind of what you were talking about, the about stuff, but like, I started building mine naturally. I didn't go, okay, I need to like build my .md, my Claude.md file. It just kind of started getting built, and then I ended up auditing it later. I think that's the important thing, is to review it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can ask it to review it and bring, flag things that could be concerning. Or if there's something it hasn't referenced in a while, maybe it's not really important, or it hasn't really, it's referenced, but it hasn't used.
Yeah.
So,
engaging more as a partner. And like you've referenced that a few times of, this is a companion of yours. And as you audit it, it's, hey, what is not useful? What have I not executed? Because I mean, the big shift I've had so far this episode, what you said beforehand, when it comes to even this, Claude.md file, is setting it up is an ideal approach. Like, this is like, I put it together as this is what I wanted, but doesn't that mean it's reality? And I love the phrase, reality is our friend. And for anybody who's still resting on there at Claude.md file, like, no, this is what I want. You're white knuckling something that might not be true. So I love that idea of auditing that file, because it allows you to reshape and stay up to date with what's going on.
Yeah, I also audited an entire company file today. It's like, look for conflicts, look for contradictions, look for outdated versions. So I had files in there. I had like a V1, V2, V3. And it's like, okay, it wanted to delete it. So here's a very technical thing that's useful. It wanted to delete the other ones. And I said, do not delete the previous versions. I like to be able to go back and go, where did we start and where did we end up? And sometimes, look, this thing can make mistakes. So, and Cowork, I said, let's, go through, and I want you to audit this. Folder, and it found a bunch of things, maybe 13 different things. And I said, do you want me to delete these things? And I said, no, create an archive folder instead. And it was like, oh, smart. So yes, it is smart. Do that. Just until we get to a certain point, and then I might go in there and delete some things. But I mean, these files are they're like Word documents. They're not taking up hardly any space at all. Like, you don't need to delete .md files in order to create more space, but you don't want it to reference stuff that's not applicable.
Mm-hmm.
So what it did was it copied it all and then put it in an archive folder, and then kept all the old stuff still in the main folder. And what triggered my noticing of the way it was operating is it asked for the permission to delete files. And I thought, there's no reason it should need permission to delete a file, because we're archiving everything. We're moving everything into an archive file folder. And I denied, it asked permission to delete. I said, no, I deny that. And it goes, oh, and then I go, did you move them, or did you just copy and paste them over there? It's like, well, I copied, and then I was going to delete those. I said, no, do not delete anything. Move, don't copy. And I said, okay. So a lot of the ways in which it will do things, I don't know why it chooses to do it the way it does it.
Yeah.
But it's something to pay attention to. And then that's something that, now that I'm thinking about it, I didn't do this, but I will now, which is from now on, instead of deleting, move into an archive file, don't copy and paste. And so then now it's got that skill. So, and its way of doing things. Yeah. I imagine, I think what everyone believes it should do and they want it to do is just do it the smartest way possible and the way they're thinking about doing it every time. But it's just not there yet. Like the AI is so smart in some ways, but also not in other ways. And so it does need some direction.
Yeah. And I mean, it's also in the literal sense how, language becomes so crucial and so critical, right? Like in communication, and I'm guilty of this, where I'll say something or somebody will say something and I won't correct them. I'll just interpret what they meant and like, got it. Cool. And I've recognized that in myself where I've gotten lax in that communication where, as long as you get the gist of it, that's good enough. Well, good enough does not get you to the outcome that you want with AI. Like you need to be particular and intentional with your wording in order to get the results that you wish for. Because that's how you end up copying files instead of moving files. I'm not saying that you prompted it wrong, but it might be like, oh, cool. You want an archive? I got you in an archive. I'll put it in an archive.
I made it.
How?
And I use the word move and it still did it the other way. And I think that this is where, like, if you do engineering at any point, it's beneficial because everything's very precise. Military, very, like, I remember having been in the military, I remember getting out and then interacting with civilians and, like, how literal I would take instruction or give in my expectation for people to follow my instructions as they were given, and then becoming upset that, like, didn't you hear what I said?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, they're just they're not used to, because in the military, it's when they say it a split second later, it has to be done exactly the way it was said. There's a command and there's a response, and it's supposed to be as fast as possible that you start closing that reaction time. And so, in the military was actually helpful and also getting really literal about what it is that I mean.
Yeah.
So there's zero confusion because, I mean, the whole thing there is if you give the wrong instruction, somebody could die. They make the stakes really, really high. So, and it's applied to everything. It's like, okay, always make it literal about everything, not just when it's life or death situation, just all the time. And that way you're conditioned to be literal consistently.
Yeah.
But then later on, as I was learning about language, realizing that every single word is a metaphor. So even that concept's a little...
A topic for another day. Pattern number 6, man, is cute. Unless there's specific prompts when it comes to building the persistence. I figured there was not, but yeah, pattern number 6 as we continue to build the infrastructure.
I mean, I will tell. Okay, well, I will tell it. Commit this to the appropriate files necessary so that you don't make this mistake again in the future, and tell me which files they are. A lot of times I'll ask it, or before it takes action, I'll tell it, how do you plan to execute this? Especially if I've seen it make a mistake before, even after updating the memory files, I'll have it tell me the plan before I have it execute.
I like that. That's also a great question. It's like, how do you plan to execute this? Because you don't want it to go rogue if it's done it already. So yeah, pattern number 6.
Iterate by reacting, not rewriting. And so I think a lot of people do this already. I don't think this is like that groundbreaking, but it might be for some people. So one is actually, I just talked about it. I'm also curious about the delivery steps. It said, I'm going to go do this. I go, I'm curious about the delivery steps. I said, include company name in this analysis. I said, update playbook. I have a playbook. And my playbook is kind of like my core. I have a core memory file that's my playbook. That's how I interact with all consulting clients. Another one is just, I reacted with, that's close, but the tone is too formal. And then one was, what about a rev share structure instead? So just like really short, like back and forth. I think a lot of people do this already. I don't think it's anything that's groundbreaking.
Yeah, just kind of refining it to your style, preference, and ideal output. That's a
Yeah, you
little
can
bit of
give
a
it.
palate cleanser.
Yeah, you don't have to give it the perfect prompt. You can give it the rough direction. See how it comes back. I've gotten. I found it to be more important about knowing what your North Star is than giving it the perfect prompt. If you have the North Star in the very beginning, it really helps a lot.
hmm
Um, and your best outputs come from like 3 to 4 rounds of short corrections, not one long prompt.
Yeah,
So you're like driving, not necessarily programming.
I like it. A little palate cleanser before dessert as we jump into pattern number 7.
That's right. Ask AI what to do next. And so here's some statements that it pulled up. What's the best move from here? I get to part. What's the best move from here? I asked, should we start a folder for, a potential consulting client that has been signed?
hmm
I also asked, should we create a reference file? This is a really good one. This has been one I've been using more and more. Should these conversations happen in cowork or chat?
Ooh,
So if you're ever in question about whether you should be in cowork or chat for what you're doing, then just ask. Chat's way better for refining an idea and like developing a plan, where cowork is much better for execution. But sometimes they're kind of bleeding into each other, and I end up like taking what I'm working on in cowork and bringing it over to chat feels like a lot of work. And sometimes it's worth taking over to chat and working it out before bringing it into cowork. And I ask cowork for the prompt and any associated files I need to take into chat in order to work it out and then bring it back.
Mm-hmm.
So both chat and cowork, when I'm juggling between the two, they're both aware that I'm working with the other. And so at the end of each one, it's what do I need to bring back to the other?
Nice. And I found that too with working with some brainstorming ideas. It was like, you get to the point where like, I think it's time to stop brainstorming and refining it and get to work and actually move over to co-work.
Yeah.
Release this idea, because at that point it just becomes mental masturbation, moving it all around.
Yep. So yeah, some examples for today. I finished the show prep doc. What's missing? What am I not seeing? And then AI suggested it's split into 2 episodes, and I pushed back because I saw the 2 episodes. I'm like, no, it's not 2, it's 1. And so I pushed back, and we ended up on 1 meaty episode instead.
Which I like it.
Yeah. So it just made the going back and forth and asking what's missing, in the end, just made the output, much more meaty. So most people see AI as like, it'll execute now that we have cowork. I tell it what to do and it does it, which it does. It does that really well. But the real leverage is in using AI as a thinking partner. I ask what we should do. We figure it out together. Then we execute.
There's steps to it. And like the relationship is different. Like we are getting to that point of, Tony Stark speaking to, his Iron Man suit.
Totally.
Right? Like, let's work this out. And we're seeing more of that. And honestly, that's like a lot of the examples we've seen, some of the pivotal examples we've seen from superhero movies and what we've seen in sci-fi is we're getting closer to that of let's engage and interact as a thinking partner, work through this problem together. And when we get to a point of, I don't even want to say completion, when we get to a point of conclusion, we can then execute. And then what I love there is adding at the end is ask AI what to do next, refining and adjusting, because just because you execute and deploy doesn't mean you're going to get the perfect product.
For one business, I created this whole spec build, like we're in chat. we just went back and forth in chat. And so we got this 32-page document. All right, I'm going to go build this in Cowork now. And then a month later, there's another 20 files just as big in that Cowork folder of like all these things that we didn't perceive at the beginning that ended up needing to get built and tracked and all this. And it's not even done yet. I mean, it's functional. It's working in the business, but, there's still things to improve. So, yeah, I think about AI as like my operator. It's a really sharp operator. I need to give them, like a human, give them context, let them know what the purpose is, ask them to propose their own things, to push back on me, and then have it build the systems that compound and have that persistent memory operating all the time. And so I think the one thing that, if someone's not using Cowork yet, I recommend getting in there. You're going to have to download the app onto your computer in order for it to work. You're not going to be able to access it through the web. I had several people over the weekend be like, how do I? And I realized I didn't have it downloaded. I'm like, oh, you got to download it.
Yeah.
And if you already have it, just go check out that Claude.md file and see what's in there. You can go in Cowork and say, pull up my Claude.md file and let's audit it and let's talk about what should be in there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, I love this, man. And like what I hope the audience takes away from this is the rethinking of how they view AI in the first place. Because so many people, when I speak to business owners, I'm getting on calls, they're still they're treating it like Google 2.0. Right? Like it's like an increased Google, which you mentioned is like at the beginning is still level 1. There's a few who they have friends who are using it like level 2, building out workflows. And that's kind of where I've settled is like, oh, okay, there's things I want to step away from. I understand the engagement with these LLMs, but how do I automate this and just take my hands off? But going from that level 3 of the overall, like you mentioned, systems, I mean, right off the bat, identifying those systems. And I could even hear in your explanation along the way of how granular you are with the interactions of things being committed to files, committed to memory, refining and re-enhancing so that every time you use it, it gets better and better. And we've talked about how AI is going to, it already has disrupted SaaS products. What I love about SaaS products, like you pay a subscription, it's the same price and the product gets better and better. That's AI when used properly. Is your Claude Cowork is better than my Claude Cowork simply because of how you're engaging with it and the persistent memory that you've established. And that's because Claude's not favoring you over me. It's you've built that relationship. And I say that with intention. It is a relationship. You learn more about it. It learns more about you, and you grow together in order to have better conversations and better executions in the long run. Am I tracking that right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my wife is like, why did we put the same exact thing in our chat or our Cowork and you got a totally different response? I'm like, yeah, I got. She's like, can you make mine like yours? And I go, not yet. And here's the thing is when I get, so one of the businesses I'm working on is my wife's business. One of the things that I'll do is when we get to a certain point, there'll be a handoff and I'll go into Cowork and I'll identify which of these files are going to help her operate her business better. And then I'll download, they're already on my computer. I don't need to download them. I'll send them over to her and put them into her Claude because I can share.
Yeah.
I can just share and put it inside of her Claude folder and have her reference it in her Cowork sessions. And then boom, it's there.
I would say really quick, as we come to the end of the episode, would you see that same level of detail that you're experiencing with your Claude Cowork being replicated with others? Like you being able to deliver that? Or would it be more of, here's the starting point, which gives you a head start and gives you the proper infrastructure foundation, but this will get better over time as you engage with it?
Yeah, I'm going to, that's part of what I'm doing is I'm building out the Cowork folders for businesses, and then I hand it off, and all the files are designed in a way to self-improve. And so there's a level of education that'll be necessary, but there's a lot of things there's a lot of files that are being produced as I'm building that aren't necessary for it to be used. They're necessary for the purpose of the build, not the purpose of the maintenance or to continue to build.
I love it, man. You're a dangerous man, Mike. Dangerous man in the best way possible. We still need an AI nickname. So if you guys have made it to the end of the episode, let us know by putting in the comments. Because I do feel like as we put all of our minds together, we're going to land on something great. But any last tidbits for the audience that you want to leave them with before I wrap it up?
No, not really. Well, yeah, the one thing I just want to mention is, I'm not putting as much stuff in school right now because I've been working on these projects, and I'm putting more energy into the individual clients. So people can like do an assessment for themselves at Bledsoe.life.
Mm-hmm.
They just go to my website, they'll be able to do an assessment there and then potentially get on a call. But the school's kind of on pause right now because everything's moving so fast. I think anyone who's teaching right now to a broad audience, they either, I don't know what they're doing differently, but I can't imagine trying to teach people as I'm building at the speed that things are being built and the speed at which things are changing. So I just noticed like a lot of school communities are basically posting features.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not really interested in just being a place to post features right now. So, and that could change in a month or two. I can be like, okay, there's like space to educate, or I figured out how to use AI in a way that like everything I'm doing is happening faster and faster. So I imagine there'll be a point where that becomes true. So just letting people know that if they go there, there's some really good stuff in the school. Don't get me wrong. There's really good stuff in there, but you're probably not going to get a lot of interaction from me right now in there.
Yeah, I know at the very least, and I could say this, and I could promise to the audience, I'm going to take the transcript from this episode, my notes, and I'll build a quick slide deck breaking down the 7 patterns and how Mike interacts and uses AI. So at the very least, there's some value and a resource that you can pull from within the school community based off of the conversations that we have, and just organizing and putting this information in an easy, digestible way. Because a lot of the listeners probably felt like they're like, oh, drinking through a fire hose, or like, how do you eat the elephant one bite at a time? But man, really, really great stuff, and certainly a lot of value to put in the school community. And at the very least, community itself is value. So being amongst others who are also on the AI journey lends something there, because there's very, very few things as good as an accelerator as group think and group learning, positive group learning.
Yeah. I mean, let's drop this. We'll drop the presentation in there, and that's a good spot for it to be.
Perfect.
Or we could just, I don't know, we can put it up somewhere.
It'll be out there.
If you're on our email lists and all that, you'll be notified what to do.
Like I said, I like to say, we're not too hard to find, and neither will that resource be. But again, there is no do the task over and over again. If you're stuck doing the task over and over again, or if you're still copy and pasting, then you're not using AI effectively. As we went through the 7 patterns of how Mike uses and works with AI. Number 1 is that you got to get yourself out of the day-to-day of your business if you really want to grow. That's a foundational truth that we've spoken about, or not even truth. I got to get away from saying that. We've covered that on a podcast before. That's a fact that we've shared. Learning is hitting dead ends. If you're playing with AI and you're coming to a dead end, that's because you're doing something that hasn't been done before, which is where you're supposed to stumble. You're supposed to hit that roadblock. I love finding no now, because no tells me where the limit is, and then I can know where I can push it. Persistent memory, program memory files, audit them. We covered that in some of the other steps, but the 3 levels. Level 1 is copy and paste. If you're still doing any type of copy and paste with AI, you're level 1. Level 2 is building out the workflows. Level 3 is zooming out and analyzing the whole dang thing. It's seeing the forest and not being stuck amongst the trees. And then Copy and paste is 90 days ago. By the time this comes out, shoot, you're looking at closer to 120 days ago. Come on, y'all, keep up. Chat versus co-work, understanding the difference. Chat is texting a smart friend, while co-work is your friend in the office with memory, tools, and the ability to execute on what you discuss. Breaking down those 7 patterns that will work is number 1, briefing, not prompting. Number 2, think in systems, not outputs. Number 3, give the AI the messy human context. Have those hard conversations. Pattern number 4 is challenge AI's reasoning. How'd you get that conclusion? Where'd that come from? I'm gonna need to see the work. Just like math in class, I'm gonna need to see the work. And then pattern number 5, build persistent context instead of re-explaining. If you have to explain yourself every single time, you wouldn't want to have to do that every time you see your friend. Well, my name is this. Come on now. You should not be treating AI like a new friend each and every single time. Pattern number 6 is iterate by reacting, by refining, not reacting. So again, this is close, but let's adjust it this way, right? And then start molding into the outcome that you want. I'm curious about the delivery steps, finding out more ways in order to iterate by refining. And then finally, pattern number 7 is ask AI what to do next. Use your thinking partner to find the next steps, lean in, and again, should these conversations happen in co-work or chat? Different questions to ask, because AI is a thinking partner. You can find other thinking partners in the school community. Check us out in Full Stack. I'm AI Hot Chocolate. That's Mike, aka soon to be named. And of course, we appreciate making it to the end. We'll catch you guys next time.